Welcome to the Folktale Project. This is Dan Scholz. Today we have a new story, and it is a very familiar one, and one that won't have any new surprises because this is the tale as you remember it. This is the story that shares the beginning of one of our more recent tales, Little Thumb. This is Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time there dwelt on the outskirts of a large forest a poor woodcutter with his wife and 2 children, the boy called Hansel and the girl Gretel. He had always little enough to live on, and once, when there was a great famine in the land, he couldn't even provide them with daily bread. One night, as he was tossing about in bed full of cares and worries, he sighed and said to his wife, "What's to become of us? How are we to support our poor children now that we have nothing more for ourselves?" "I'll tell you what, husband," answered the woman. "Early tomorrow morning we'll take the children out into the thickest part of the wood. There we shall light a fire for them and give them each a piece of bread. Then we'll go on to our work and leave them alone. They won't be able to find their way home, and we shall thus be rid of them." "No, wife," said her husband. "That I won't do. How could I find it in my heart to leave my children alone in the wood? The wild beasts would soon come and tear them to pieces." "Oh, you fool," said she. "Then we must all 4 die of hunger, and you may as well go and plane the boards for our coffins." And she left him no peace till he consented. "But I can't help feeling sorry for the poor children," added the husband. The children, too, had not been able to sleep for hunger, and had heard what their stepmother had said to their father. Gretel wept bitterly and spoke to Hansel. "Now it's all up with us." "No, no, Gretel," said Hansel. "Don't fret yourself. I'll be able to find a way of escape, no fear." And when the old people had fallen asleep, he got up, slipped on his little coat, opened the back door, and stole out. The moon was shining clearly, and the white pebbles which lay in front of the house glittered like bits of silver. Hansel bent down and filled his pockets with as many of them as he could cram in. Then he went back and said to Gretel, "Be comforted, my dear little sister, and go to sleep. God will not desert us." And he lay down in bed again. At daybreak, even before the sun was up, the woman came and woke the 2 children. "Get up, you lay-a-beds, we're all going to the forest to fetch wood." She gave them each a bit of bread and spoke. "There's something for your luncheon, but don't eat it up before. It's all you'll get." Gretel took the bread under her apron, as Hansel had the stones in his pocket. Then they all set out together on the way to the forest. After they had walked for a little, Hansel stood still and looked back at the house, and this maneuver he repeated again and again. His father observed him and spake. "Hansel, what are you gazing at there, and why do you always remain behind? Take care and don't lose your footing." "Oh, father," said Hansel, "I am looking back at my white kitten, which is sitting on the roof waving me a farewell." The woman exclaimed, "What a donkey you are! That isn't your kitten, that's the morning sun shining on the chimney." But Hansel had not looked back at his kitten, but had always dropped one of the white pebbles out of his pocket onto the path. When they had reached the middle of the forest, the father said, "Now, children, go and fetch a lot of wood, and I'll light a fire that you mayn't feel cold." Hansel and Gretel heaped up brushwood till they had made a pile nearly the size of a small hill. The brushwood was set fire to, and when the flames leaped high, the woman said, "Now lie down at the fire, children, and rest yourselves. We are going into the forest to cut down wood. When we've finished, we'll come back and fetch you." Hansel and Gretel sat down beside the fire, and at midday ate their little bits of bread. They heard the strokes of the axe, so they thought their father was quite near. But it was no axe they heard, but a bough he had tied on a dead tree, and that was blown about by the wind. When they had sat for a long time, their eyes closed with fatigue, and they fell fast asleep. When they awoke at last, it was pitch dark. Gretel began to cry, and said, "How are we to ever get out of the wood?" But Hansel comforted her. "Wait a bit," he said, "till the moon is up, and then we'll find our way sure enough." And when the moon had risen, he took his sister by the hand and followed the pebbles which shone like new 3-penny bits and showed them the path. They walked all through the night, and at daybreak reached their father's house again. They knocked at the door, and when the woman opened it, she exclaimed, "You naughty children, what a time you've slept in the wood! We thought you were never going to come back." But the father rejoiced, for his conscience had reproached him for leaving his children behind by themselves. And that is the beginning of Hansel and Gretel, a story that very closely mirrors the opening to Little Thumb. This is Dan Scholz for the Folktale Project. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Overcast, anywhere you like to get your podcasts. You can follow us on Threads and Instagram at Folktale Project, and you can find us wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. As always, thank you so much for listening.